In today's video, we're going to be exploring some NHL trade talk from around the league, looking at a potential rumor involving the Islanders and the Boston Bruins. Plus, Mitch Marner recently made some comments at his charity event that certainly have upset many of the fan base, thinking that he values money over Stanley Cups, and perhaps also that putting more of the blame on their lack of success around many of the other lower profile players on the team. Plus, we have several other signings to discuss today, including Ross Colton, Oliver Wahlstrom, as well as a new head coach in AHL as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Before we do jump into the news, there was some news on the weekend as well that I haven't had a chance to talk and acknowledge here as of yet, but a long-time NHL figure, Billy MacMillan, passed away at the age of 80 years of age. He was a PEI born, so obviously I'm from Atlantic Canada myself, so certainly not a lot of people from our region tend to be successful in the NHL, whether it be as a player, coach, etc. So certainly, want to acknowledge those who have. And he was a very influential person in the region, especially in PEI, for all of his success. He spent about 5 years being able to represent Team Canada internationally. Played in the NHL mostly for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but then later with the New York Islanders. Ended up winning a Stanley Cup with the New York Islanders in 1980 while he was on the bench as an assistant coach. He later became the very first head coach as well in New Jersey Devils history. So certainly, like I said, a long career in the game. Very influential in the Atlantic Canadian region for sure, based on all his success. So certainly wanted to acknowledge his passing. Certainly wish condolences to his family and friends. And certainly, like I said, a well-respected figure. Everybody who ever encountered him had nothing but great things to say. Seemed like not only was he influential in the game of hockey, but just in life as a great person as well. So certainly I want to offer condolences to Billy MacMillan's family. On to the news of the day. We have some pretty important RFA signings since our video earlier. Of course, earlier in the day, we acknowledged the signing of rookie sensation Connor Bedard, as well as a few other players. And now we have some key RFAs, including Ross Colton in Colorado. They've avoided arbitration and settled on a 4-year agreement, which will pay him $4 million per season on average. So his AAV, $4 million. The breakdown is as follows. In year one, he gets a $4.1 million salary. In year two, he gets a full no trade clause, as well as a $500,000 signing bonus, and then a $4 million salary. In year 3 and 4, he does have a modified no trade. As I record this, we don't know the exact number of teams he's able to restrict and block, but he does have a form of a modified no trade with a $4 million salary in year 3 and $3.9 million in year 4. So certainly a bit of a backdiving contract in a sense, but not drastically. I really, based on what he's been able to accomplish in Tampa and hopefully get a bigger role in Colorado, I think this should be a very good deal overall between Colton and the Avalanche. The New York Islanders have come to terms as well with RFA forward Oliver Wahlstrom, and he actually signs a 1-year deal equivalent to his qualifying offer, even though his qualifying offer technically had expired a couple days ago, which was $874,125, so $874,125. And you may ask, well, why did he sign this now? Why does this work suddenly after all this time when he could have signed this much sooner? And obviously, they've would have negotiated between Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders and his rep. And clearly they were not going to get any kind of more of a commitment out of the team. For Oliver Wahlstrom's sake, there's some talk that maybe he wouldn't mind a fresh start. I don't think he's requested a trade or anything like that. But I think some players, reach a point where they're, kind of open to it. They'd accept it gladly to get a better opportunity, but they're not going to come out and ask for it either. And I think that might be fair to say where kind of things stand with him. But this is definitely a 1-year prove-it kind of deal. He spent a lot of last year on injured reserve as well, which didn't help his case. Had a hard time gaining the trust of the team and the coach as well. But Wahlstrom was a high pick. Certainly when he was younger, especially, showed a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and hopefully he can accomplish that. But with this low salary like this as well, without trying to push for more money, it also allows him a better chance of getting claimed on waivers if he doesn't make the team in a training camp, to get him that fresh start with another team. It also makes him more tradable as well. So we'll see. So there's advantages to him taking less now to hopefully make more later if he gets the right opportunity. So we'll see how that works out for him. But hopefully, the Islanders' sake, he can be a healthy contributor to their success this year. The Florida Panthers have also made a pair of signings, including defenseman Casey Fitzgerald. He gets a 1-year, 2-way contract, paying him $775,000 to NHL level. Same goes for them signing John Ludwig. He gets a 2-year deal though, 2-way, both years, $775,000 at the NHL level. Now, there's also news out of Calgary. The Calgary Flames have announced they have a new head coach for their American Hockey League team, the Calgary Wranglers, which will be Trent Cull. Of course, they recently lost their head coach, Mitch Love, who failed to get the promotional opportunity at the big club in Calgary and sought other opportunities elsewhere. Cull, of course, was an assistant last year with the Canucks. Before that, he spent 5 years as their head coach in Vancouver with their AHL affiliate between its time in Utica. Then, of course, they moved to Abbotsford, but throughout the same franchise, same players. He's got lots of experience in that role previously. Now, earlier today as well, we did mention that Nike had announced that they were not going to be renewing their contract on a sponsorship with Hockey Canada. Of course, many sponsors paused their funding with Hockey Canada once the controversy broke out last year regarding the allegations against the 2018 World Junior team. We got news today that Nike was not going to be renewing that and that they were officially permanently ending that relationship. But apparently, according to TSN investigative reporter Rick Westhead, he says that Hockey Canada was made aware of this by Nike a number of months back. So this was not really news to them. I think the deal is probably just officially expired now. And apparently Hockey Canada sounds like they're going to be working with Fanatics moving forward. Obviously, Fanatics is getting the NHL contract starting next year as well with NHL jerseys. So certainly could be a very profitable arrangement and sponsorship agreement there in place. So we'll see how that works out. But obviously a lot of companies, like I said, had kind of moved away because of everything that's going on. Some have come back because of all the actions they've taken to make changes. And we're still waiting on the final report and find out what exactly happened and what the findings were from the investigation, so we can hopefully know for sure what everybody's dealing with. And I'm sure from a victim perspective that they'd like to know what's going to be moving forward as well to get some closure on the incident. So hopefully we'll know that sooner than later. But an update on the sponsorship, they'll be working with Fanatics, sounds of things here in the not too distant future. As I mentioned as well, when it comes to the rumor section of the video, we're going to take a look at our trade rumor involving the Bruins and Islanders, and I want to look at the Leafs and Mitch Marner here as well, and question whether or not the Leafs should make a trade within their core four group of guys or not. There's some of the comments Marner made are I guess we'll see if we determine if they're taken out of context or where things stand. But with the Islanders and the Bruins, the rumor going around is that they've been having trade negotiations involving a package that could be centered around Jean-Gabriel Pageau of the Islanders and Jake DeBrusk from Boston. Now, it's difficult to say if this goes down. I mean, a couple of things. If you just break it down simply, the Islanders, they need more scoring. There's no doubt. They need a top six scoring winger. That's 100% the biggest need, in my opinion, at least on this team. They need a game breaker who can score more goals for them when it matters most, those critical times. When the chips are down and they need something to happen. But can Jake DeBrusk be that guy? I mean, maybe. I mean, he hasn't. I don't want to say he hasn't proven himself. He has. But is he a 40, 50 goal guy? Do they even need that much of a score? I don't know. He did have a really solid year last year, and I think he can be a solid 25, 30 goal guy consistently. So I do think Jake DeBrusk could help the New York Islanders. There's no doubt. But I think the need here for them is a scoring winger. So he fits that mold. Is he a highest level, a high enough level for what they want? I don't know, but it makes sense why they'd have some interest. From the Bruins' perspective, a lot of uncertainty right now. They don't know if Patrice Bergeron's coming back. They don't know if David Krejci's coming back. Many Bruins insiders and fans seem to think that less likely that Krejci returns, better chance he goes back to Europe maybe, or maybe doesn't play at all. I think a lot of people feel that there's some chance Bergeron comes back, but no guarantee. And there's many that feel like there's a pretty good chance that neither come back, which if that's the case, that leaves them pretty thin at center ice, which is an incredibly important position. Of course, they made a lot of moves in the offseason, bringing in some players on cheaper, veteran contracts, made a few trades. They had to make some moves for cap purposes. They still need to sign Jeremy Swayman as well. So really, that would be the main way that they could free up maybe some space, would be to move one of their goalies. And the indication is there they don't really want to do that. And I don't entirely blame them. At some point, though, they may have to in the next year or two. But, it makes sense that they would be looking at a center. Now, of course, Pageau is no Bergeron, but he can play a similar style. He can play a very solid defensive way. He's never won a Selke trophy or anything like Bergeron has, but he's typically, he gets some acknowledgement, gets some votes, and certainly is acknowledged as being a decent two-way center. So I can understand the rationale to why each team might have interest in each of those players individually, but are they the best fit for each one? Hard to say. I mean, from the Islanders' perspective, I don't know that DeBrusk is. From the Bruins' perspective, I can understand why they'd like Pajot. Islanders beat reporter Stefan Rosner has chimed in here on this on social media and says he doesn't think this is going to happen. In his opinion, it doesn't make sense for them to trade Pajot unless they're going to get an even higher profile scoring winger. So like I said, DeBrusk is a good scoring winger. Is there bigger fish in the pond that could score more goals? Sure. But the problem is what are the Islanders going to give up to make that happen? And who's that going to be? I mean, they were apparently in on the DeBrincat trade talks with Ottawa, and that never materialized. Now, of course, you got to remember, that doesn't necessarily mean that Ottawa didn't like their package or their offer. That was more of a case of DeBrincat pushing to go home to Detroit. And if he wasn't going to sign with said team, it didn't matter what the offer was, they weren't going to do it. So, like I said, I don't think we can blame Lou for that one, but, is that the kind of player they need? It absolutely is. And he just has a little bit more of a pedigree and a little bit more of a past history of being more of a higher level goal scorer. So, certainly I understand where this rumor is coming from in that sense, but he feels they need to go higher than a guy like DeBrusk to move a guy like Pajot. Now, of course, we don't know about the future of Zach Parise yet. We're not quite clear if he's returning. If he doesn't come back and they trade at Pajot, well, there's 2/3 of your third line, which they were quite happy with last year. So, obviously, that could make the third line look a lot different and could, certainly take away from their defensive play. Obviously, they played a lot of defensive first minutes, defensive zone starts, and certainly have a different role in the team and still contributed a good amount offensively as well. So, like I said, the problem is what are you going to give up if you're the New York Islanders? This has been an ongoing conversation for about 2 years that they need a high-level scoring top six winger, somebody who can give you 30, 40 goals, and they just don't have the assets to get that. And that's the struggle. And getting into free agency is very, very difficult without overpaying drastically. So, they bring in Bo Horvat via trade. They were able to get that done. They don't have a deep prospect pool. You can only give away so many first-round picks because, you don't have a deep pool. The only way to build that up is to keep your picks and to make good choices. And they're in a tough spot right now. So, do I see this trade making some sense? I do. At the same time, I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to happen. But I can see if the Bruins up the ante here for Pajot, that maybe it happens, but only if Bergeron doesn't come back, because that's another thing. They're not going to pull that deal unless they know for sure that Bergeron's not returning either. So could they revisit that closer to training camp on some more things they're kind of known to each of these clubs? It's possible. I don't know what's the perfect fit, and we'll see what happens. Now in Toronto, we'll take a look at Mitch Marner. He's been getting a lot of attention here the past couple of days. I saw the quotes be starting to spread through social media and a few articles popping up here over the course of the weekend. Wasn't sure exactly when I was going to put it into a video, but I figured today seemed to be a good time because it's getting a lot of attention right now. So obviously I kind of wanted to weigh in here. So essentially Mitch Marner, like many high-profile stars, has a charity event that he hosts every year in Toronto, where he's from, and made some comments that are kind of getting a lot of attention. And to me, like I said, the questions we want to pose to ourselves here as we review his comments is, one, is really should Brad Treliving and the Leafs really explore trading a core 4 member? Because it sounded like ever since the GM change that was less likely to happen, and now lately we've been hearing a lot about Nylander and the negotiations not going well. Could that lead to a trade? And is it really all going to boil down to money? And it's not that they want to trade players, but if they can't make it work with the cap and they just won't take less money, they may not have a choice. So should they make the trade with one of these guys is the question we want to talk about. Secondly is, did Mitch Marner, maybe not on purpose, but did he actually insult some of his teammates, especially players making less money, having smaller roles on the team? And does he and his buddies, meaning Matthews and Nylander specifically, care more about how much money they make in coining error as big as they can, more than winning a Stanley Cup? Because that's what people are saying online, and that's what so the interpretation of these comments were by a lot of people. So let's take a look here. So ultimately, these comments could be taken out of context. That's why I don't want to jump to conclusions here. I want to see what people think and see what everybody says. So essentially here, I'll show you the quotes and we'll kind of go through. So one of them, the first one says, Brad came in and defended us all, really, and our team. It's a full team effort every night. It's not the narrative a lot of the times, but we all know we got to be better, and that's what we're getting excited to do when we get the season going. So that particular quote kind of saying that, hey, listen, I know a lot of the times it's the big four guys that always take the blame when things don't go well, but you got to remember, it's a team game. We're not the only ones on the ice, and, we feel good that he came in and defended us and made us feel that it's, maybe not always our fault and that, he's going to look after us type of thing. And that kind of comes off the wrong way, because at the end of the day, if you want to take all the money, then I'm sorry, the responsibility and the blame and the glory when it goes well goes to you. It's just that simple. I mean, if the Leafs were to win the Stanley Cup this year, do you think it would be David Kampf and Alex Kerfoot making all the glory and getting all the accolades, or is it going to be Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Willie Nylander? That's just the end of the day. You're going to make all the money. The attention and the spotlight, especially in a hotbed market like Toronto, comes with it. That's just how it goes. I'm sorry, you're not going to change that, and you have to be willing to deal with that responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. I know it's an old quote from a Marvel movie, but at the same time, it's true. If you're going to take all the money, you have to be willing to accept the consequences. You're going to be the first one to say, yes, I won the Stanley Cup, I did it. You're also going to be the first one to say, listen, I wasn't good enough, and not because of that, we didn't win, and we weren't good enough. It's just that simple. So when the Leafs lost against the Panthers in the playoffs, you didn't really hear a whole lot of that going on. You didn't hear a lot of personal responsibility. I mean, there was a little bit from some players, but not necessarily from these top guys. Now, the other quote that's getting a lot of attention here as well is talking about, with Marner, regarding the ongoing extension negotiations with Matthews and Nylander, which at this point, we don't really hear a lot about Matthews. It sounds like all the focus is on getting Nylander done first, and it sounds like Matthews probably prefers to get Nylander done first, and it sounds like Nylander would probably prefer if Matthews went first, because as we know, nobody wants to be the first one to go, leave money on the table and say, okay, I'll embrace the concept that you need to take a little bit less to leave more for your other group of guys to make the team better so that we have a better chance to win. And then find out that the other guys don't do it. That's the problem that they're running into here. Is Nylander doesn't want to go first and then have Matthews cash in at 14.5, and then now he's making, say, 9. That's a $5 million gap. Marner is already making more than that. He's already making between 10 and 11. He's going to want more in his next deal, which is only a year away from going through the same saga. And if suddenly he gets bumped up to say Matthews takes 14 and Marner wants at least 13 or 13.5 or something like that, now you're going to have a case of Nylander taking $4 to $5 million less than these two guys. And is he maybe not quite as important as those two guys? Sure, you can make that argument that he might be third on the pecking order here. But is it a $4 or $5 million gap in how they perform? Absolutely not. So I understand from all perspectives here why the problems are the way they are. It almost needs to be done together. Of course, you get different agents, and it's going to be complicated to do. But at the end of the day here, it's a big deal. So Marner's quote on the negotiations for his two buddies here says, I know both of them have a lot of joy and love for this team, and they want to be here. We'll see. If need be, I'm going to try to get involved and help on both sides. But at the same time, they're my buddies before they are my teammates, and I'm going to look at them as that. So it sounds like people are interpreting this as saying, they're my buddies. I want them to personally succeed and make as much money as possible. And we are individuals and friends before we're Toronto Maple Leafs teammates. So they're putting them personal interest and personal success, and you can measure personal success by how much money you make ahead of the team. That's the way a lot of people are interpreting this. Now, I'll caution you, you're in a media scrum, you're at a charity event, you're in the off season, you're probably not really in your because obviously these guys do interviews all season long. You had a bit of a break, not really in midseason form, so to speak, when it comes to speaking. Maybe your words are not chosen the best. Maybe they're misinterpreted. I tell you, but this is, in my opinion, the comments come off awfully. And I can understand why people are talking about it. I can understand why people are upset. And to be honest, I don't know that it's completely fair, all the criticism that Marner's getting, but I understand where it's coming from, and I understand why some people are saying, like, listen, maybe we need to get rid of one of these guys because all they care about is getting paid. And at the end of the day, you have to have the heart to want to win. And right now, it's just another example that it doesn't sound that way. Now, these guys have had, 7 playoff years, I think it is, and they've got one measly playoff round victory. Like they haven't had the success. They want all the glory. They want all the money. They just don't want the responsibility. And that's the way people are taking this. And if that really is how they feel, then I'm sorry. I do think that a trade should be made. They do need to shake up the DNA of this team, and they do need to have a win-first mentality when it comes to everything else. And that's just how it has to be. But in my opinion, if you look at all the DNA of all the other teams that have won recently, that this is how they're built. Team first, and all the other stuff is secondary. But I don't know. I just would like to know what everybody thinks. Is this the fair reaction that Marner is getting? Is he insulting his other teammates by saying it's a team, effort, by basically saying, hey, the fourth line guy who makes league minimum and plays 6 minutes a night, it's just as much his fault as it was mine, and I'm making, $10-11 million, right? And then, like I said, the other one is that it makes it sound like he hopes Willie and Austin get paid as much as possible because they're friends and he wants to see them do well. And of course, selfishly, he's got a year away from going through the same negotiation to increase his own pay. And if they get paid bigger money, he's going to get paid bigger money too. And is money more important than winning? A lot of fans would say no. A lot of players would probably say no, but I think there are some players out there that would say yes. I think there's different players. They're all made up differently. Not everybody is about winning. Some of them strictly look at this as a business, as in a career. If they don't win, but they make tons of money, they're still pretty darn happy. And everybody's different in that respect. I mean, you can get a bunch of different answers by asking a bunch of different players. But what do you think on these comments? Is the criticism fair? Should they end up, really shaking up the DNA of this team? Would it be Marner or Nylander that would go? Want to know what everybody thinks down in the comments and see what happens. We're probably bound to get some Leaf news here this week. As I mentioned before, we should have a Samsonov contract probably before Friday, considering it's an arbitration date, which should lead to a Matt Murray buyout, I would think, or possible trade. And there's some other things that the Leafs we know they're working on as well. I would think Brad Treliving has to have something substantial. If he's going to do it, it's going to have to happen here pretty soon. Or we're going to probably be looking at what we have now as what they go into the season with next year in the fall, which isn't really all that far away. So let me know your thoughts on something discussed today in the comments, and we'll talk further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.